I'm Linus Torvalds. I have a hard time even really saying that. I mean, apart from the venue changes, the biggest changes the issues that keep coming up there's a few issues that are the same, but most of the time, just how we do development has changed, and then people's worries change just due to that. And some of the kernel summits have a lot of vendors come in, or just end users talking about their problems. Others have been more technically oriented. This one seems to be more oriented towards our workflow issues. So there's been differences, but on the other hand, the similarities are much bigger. Just the fact that you end up seeing all these people you never see otherwise. I like having it just because no real work gets done here, and a lot of it actually ends up being rehashing issues that actually would probably be better off being handled in email. But at the same time, I think from a social standpoint, it's kind of nice for people to meet each other, and even if you just sit at beers afterwards and talk things over, it's still part of kind of a community thing. That's always been true. I think this year maybe more so than usual. Part of that may be because we haven't had a lot of huge pressing technical issues. So what people have been worried about are just how we do development, not about particular development issues so much. And yeah, then quality obviously is one of the big worries. Everybody wants to make sure that we don't regress in that department. I thought it was kind of funny to see the actual numbers and lines crossing, and that was interesting. What I was kind of disturbed by, I knew a lot of people don't actually see all the weekly regression emails. I was kind of surprised by just how few people. I was expecting like a quarter would see them. It seemed to be much less than that. No, I think in the end, one of the reasons I like the regression list is it's fairly low key. It's something that comes in once a week, and it's something that people can spend 5 minutes on, and hopefully more, but even just spending 5 minutes checking that, does anything on this list look like it might be in my area, would be useful. But on the other hand, real quality to me has always been making sure people are proud of the code they write, and not so much any particular thing you can do. It's more about making sure that people are involved and take it personally, and I think quality comes from that in the end. Yeah, to me, one of the things I look for at the summit is about process issues, because in the end, I do very little development. So for me, things like release cycle issues, quality issues, all these discussions are really what I come looking for. And we have been so successful trying to shrink the release cycle that I actually like to at least try to shrink it a bit more, although the arguments against it were, I think they convinced me personally that I don't think we can. But that is kind of getting a feedback for what the main subsystem maintainers think about how the release cycle works, how it could be changed, what is even worth trying. To me, that's pretty interesting. Well, it is shorter than most. On the other hand, I was pretty happy with the fact that nobody was really unhappy with our current release cycle. Yes, people, including me, were interested in looking what happens if we try to shrink it even more. But I didn't seem to get any, nobody was saying that the current process is broken. It was more like people were more interested in maybe tweaking things a bit and changing that. I think that's a fairly good sign, because we've been doing this for 3 years, and the fact that people aren't screaming says that, okay, it's almost certainly not perfect, but it's also not broken. It's one of the, I think one of the sessions later today is going to be about another aspect of the kind of user land versus kernel layer changes, and they are always so painful. It is, I don't think that's, in general, anything where we can keep everything in the kernel and we don't have to worry about user land interactions and tools, and especially graphical nice GUIs that kernel people aren't that great at. We are much better at that than when we have to try to integrate with a group that doesn't share our values and doesn't really know all our issues, and we don't know theirs. So that's always going to be painful. I actually was much happier about the private discussion afterwards, where people clustered in small groups of 3-4 people and said, okay, I have this and I think I can do something about it. I think the discussions afterwards were actually more productive than the discussions during the session. I don't know. It's not even that I'm used to it, it's that I'm so out of it that I don't even care. I mean, I tend to have very strict blinders on, where I concentrate on not even the kernel, but like certain parts of the kernel and just maintaining it. So everything else to me is fluff. And then when the tools issues or stuff that is around the kernel comes up, most of the time it just irritates me, because it means having to work A, outside my regular area, B, having to make often decisions on whether to merge stuff based on issues that I'm not comfortable with, or a lot of other kernel developers aren't comfortable with either. And that's, I think, one of the reasons we end up having all these tens of different interfaces, just because we're not very good at that. Well, we'll see how that goes. I haven't done that particular talk before. I'll try to be less than just a tutorial. I want to also explain the design of Git, and perhaps a bit of the history behind it, although I think a lot of people are going to be aware of that part. For some people it is. At the same time, it's been kind of interesting to work for me on Git, because it ended up, it's a completely different community, and it actually ends up being used quite a lot on like OS X, and has nothing to do with the kernel whatsoever. So yes, it's being used for the kernel, but no, not all kernel people use it anyway. And a lot of the problems for Git on the mailing list actually come from non-kernel sources that are using it for other projects. So I actually view Git as something completely separate, even though it's fairly integral to how we do things in the kernel too.